right. Now, I asked that the audio quality be better than it was at the Oscars last night, because I thought it was fairly annoying. So, anyways, we're going to call to order the, I didn't hear that. Oh, no, definitely not. Definitely not. Okay. The February 27, 2012 meeting of the Agenda Charter Committee will now come to order. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Chairwoman Boyce.
I am here.
Mr. Esposito. Here. Mr. Howland. Here. Ms. Cayley. Here. Mr. McCann.
Here.
Okay. At this time, we'll call a public forum. Is there anybody here to address us?
There is not.
Okay. So we'll close the public forum. We're going to approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2012. If there's any additions, corrections, please have them to the clerk by the end of tomorrow, end of the week, whatever is appropriate. At this time, we'll call the first order of business.
Referral 12-62, amending Article 6, Section 545-26A of the Rules to the Legislature of the County of Monroe.
Moved by Legislator Cayley and seconded by Mr. Esposito. Okay, was there any discussion on the matter? Ms. Cayley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Article 6, Section 545-26A of the Rules of the Legislature of the County of Monroe states in part, no local law or resolution may be filed, which is substantially the same as a local law or resolution then pending before or previously submitted to the legislature of one of its committees. Each local law or resolution shall contain a single subject matter. What I'm speaking to today is substantially the same as ruling that comes out with submitted legislature. Since 2012 change of the legislative cycles as a result of redistricting plan in 2011, at question has been the reasons and or necessities of legislators elected in 2012 serving 4-year versus whatever term that they would go to. And the subsequent result of this decision would be the anchoring of the referral cycle to 4 years as well as rather than the longstanding 2-year cycle. One of the arguments cited for the extended referral cycle was that the legislative body and the president would be capable and flexible to respond to unexpected issues. Furthermore, that changes for whatever reasons would be considered as needed with expediency and or flexibility, that the body as a whole would be reliable to recognize the difference between needless action and diligent response. Enhanced by the 4-year cycle change, the substantially the same as ruling, while initially offered as a rescuer of needless repetition, now signals some concern. The 4-year referral cycle coupled with the substantially the same as rule is, I believe, in direct conflict with the previous justification for the term and cycle changes, as it's doubtful, as in past practices, that any resubmitted proposal will enter the committee process during the same 4-year cycle. Utilizing the substantially the same as rule over a 4-year cycle will stifle reconsideration of previously presented material regardless of need, and subsequently the same as will continue to emanate from one individual's interpretation over a longer period of time. If as a legislative body we're considered by the maker of both the new term and referral cycle to respond in a fair, just, and open fashion, then certainly we're wise enough to determine if resubmitted proposals are merely repetitious or rather worthy of consideration, and that said proposal should follow the committee process. Finally, I'd like to encourage my colleagues to consider the amendment of Article 6, Section 545-26A, removing the text, quote, or previously submitted to, unquote. I believe that it will further strengthen our oath to serve equally and in a bipartisan fashion as we address the needs of Monroe County. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank Legislator Cayley for bringing forward this proposal. I certainly would encourage this committee to favorably advance it onto the full legislature. I'd like to make another point because I realize we had a debate similar to this issue last month when we were talking about changing the actual terms in the charter to become a 4-year session rather than traditional 2-year session. And I bring this up because that obviously is something that I objected to. I think 4 years is far too long before an individual legislator can reintroduce legislation that might be on a subject matter similar to what they've done before. But I actually believe that before we even changed it from a 2-year session to a 4-year session. I co-sponsored this legislation, I think almost exactly 4 years ago with another member of our legislature, because even within the context of a 2-year cycle in a 2-year session, this proposal or this limitation in the charter I don't think is conducive to allowing this body to deliberate on proposals and legislation. The legislative process is difficult enough, as well it should be, to convince a majority of our elected colleagues to support anything. But the way that the monthly cycles are set up in the county legislature, it doesn't allow for ideas to be introduced and to develop and for compromise to occur in a very natural or dynamic manner. It's very rigid in the amount of time you have before you put forth an idea officially to the public, to have comment on it, to have a committee meeting, and then to try to get a favorable vote. And for that reason, I thought that this rule within the charter was limiting and should be changed. We should give ourselves more opportunity to put forth an idea and have discussion about it before formal action occurs, outside and in addition to the monthly cycle. And at the very least, we should remove this limitation that says we can only put forward something once every session. Because even if it's not an extenuating circumstance, and I realize that the president of the majority of the legislature can bring back a proposal on an issue that's been considered before if there is some kind of great challenge to our community that warrants it. But an individual legislator should be able to work on an issue, should be able to flesh it out and improve that proposal during the course of the standard legislative process and not have to wait and try to develop something and then put it in just to be dealt with in the confines of one monthly cycle. So that's something I'd ask you to consider when you think about this same as limitation. I certainly would be in favor of even expanding it so that you are allowed to bring back something 2 or 3 times at most, so you don't have anyone abusing the system whereas they're putting in the same proposal over and over during a 4-year session just for the purpose of making some kind of political point. But I think there is a way in which we could enhance the abilities of an individual legislator, not necessarily the will of the entire legislator on an extenuating circumstance, to bring forth an idea again. I think that's a legitimate way to improve the democratic process and the inner working of this legislature. So for that reason, I think this same as limitation puts pressure on bringing ideas to fruition in a way that I think is constructive. So in addition to the valid points that Ms. Callie makes, I'd like to throw that out there as sort of the real motivation I've had since I've been a part of this body, to allow ideas to basically happen more dynamically over a greater period of time than just the constructs of a one monthly cycle within one 4-year session. So for that reason, I'd ask my colleagues here in this committee to advance this proposal to the full legislature.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to be heard on the matter? I just have one question, I guess, to the president of the legislature with regards to Mr. Esposito's point about putting a referral into the cycle. If a legislator were to introduce a piece of legislation, say in the month of March, could that not be tabled for consideration after that referral develops? So if, you know, his point to developing, having public conversation about that, would that not be the proper channel?
Madam Chair, I believe that that's true.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Esposito.
I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the president for his efforts in that regard. We're currently doing that with the work plan. Last month at this committee, we tabled that so that we could, in the context of a legislative body, have more conversations about it. I think that's the appropriate way to work out a piece of legislation. I just think that this component of the rules of this body further limits that in the event that you don't even have support to table and work on a proposal, which we've tried to do in the past sometimes, I think, without success. So I appreciate your efforts and the president's efforts to do that maybe going forward on issues that legislators would like to work on longer than 1 month cycle. But I still think that this rule should be removed from the rules for the reasons I identified. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? No. As well, no.
3-2.
Appreciate
Or 2-3 fails.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next point of legislation.
Referral 12-0070, confirmation of appointment to the Monroe County Board of Health.
Moved by Mr. McCann, second by Mr. Holland. Is there any questions with regards to the appointment to the Board of Health? I best Dr. Doniger has made the trip here, so, seeing none over here. Mr. Esposito?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Through you to the administration, could I just maybe get a little bit more of an overview about what the Monroe County Board of Health is, who's on it now, and its primary functions?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, the Monroe County Board of Health is statutorily defined in the public health law and in the Monroe County Charter. The mission or role of the Board of Health is to be advisory to the county health director, to the county legislature, and to the county executive. So we have monthly meetings. There are, I believe, 11 members of the board altogether. 5 of them are defined based on membership in another organization. For example, one member of the Board of Health comes from the county legislature. Dr. Quattro serves as that board member now. One sort of interesting thing about the board is that it plays a regulatory role in the enforcement process regarding violations of the New York State Sanitary Code and the Monroe County Sanitary Code, so that if an operator of a facility under permit with the health department is found not to be in compliance with some appropriate law, we have an administrative hearing process, and the Monroe County Board of Health is the final arbiter of that.
Thank you very much. May I continue, Madam Chair?
You may.
Through you, the candidate before us today, Mr. Cotto, is this an appointment to one of those ex officio spots, or is this an at-large appointment? Can you explain to me the nature of how he became a candidate?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is one of the at-large spots. I became acquainted with him about a year ago in the context of a number of community committees and task forces that I sit on, and I was impressed with his enthusiasm and his knowledge of the workings of the Rochester City School District.
And through you, Madam Chair, is there any kind of medical or public health background that you're required to have to serve on this, or is it pretty much at the discretion of the appointee?
Through you, Madam Chair, there's no requirement that each individual have a medical credential. There are two seats on the board that sort of fall into that area. The Monroe County Medical Society is invited to nominate someone, although the county executive and the legislature are not required to accept that nomination. And similarly, the Genesee Valley Nurses Association are offered the opportunity to make a recommendation. Generally, though, the board is primarily made up of lay people.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, may I ask, I'm not sure the appropriate person, but I think I may even asked this question before when we've confirmed Board of Health appointees. Why does this come to this committee and not the Human Services Committee?
I guess I would have to say, based on the information that I've been supplied, the Agenda Charter Committee is the appropriate committee for at-large appointments for most of the boards that we have in the county legislature, but that can be verified by the president, as he is in. Thank you.
Madam Chair, well explained. Very good.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Doniger.
Anything further? I just would like to add my recommendation of Mr. Cotto. I think that based on the fact that, his resume does reflect a great deal of interaction with our youth of our community. And given the fact that I think the health and well-being of the youth of our community is quite important, and obviously his affiliation with many of the Rochester City School District physical ed departments and the different schools in the city, and certainly that's been something that we've talked about a lot in the community. I think that he's a fine appointment, and also I think it's also outstanding that he is also fluent in Spanish as well. I don't know what your board reflection is, but I think it's certainly a good selection. So I thank you for bringing him forward as a board member. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Dr. Doniger, for coming this afternoon. It looks like this is the end of our new business. Is there any unfinished business at this time? Hearing none, then we'll ask for the adjournment of the committee, and our next committee meeting is March 26th, 2012 at 5 p.m. Thank you.